Now that Donald Trump is going to be the new president, the question becomes, if you're here illegally, should you consider departing the United States? And without answering this directly, I'm going to start by telling you a short story. So I have a client who entered the United States 25 years ago. He was here unlawfully present for those 25 years, and now he has a US citizen child who's in the military who wants to petition for my client, the father. And so the client comes to me and he wants me to apply for his permanent residence, his green card, through his US citizen military child. Ordinarily, this would be a good case. Pretty straightforward. We would have to fix his unlawful entry through something called military parole in place. And once the illegal entry is fixed, then we can easily apply for his permanent residence. But there was a major problem in this case, and that was my client voluntarily departed the United States a few years ago and re-entered. And by doing so, he triggered a 10-year bar the moment he departed the United States. And then when he re-entered during the bar period, he triggered a permanent bar. So now he's permanently ineligible for permanent residence unless he jumps through a bunch of hoops, one of which includes departing the United States and waiting for 10 years outside the United States. So how does this happen? You need to understand the 3-year bar, the 10-year bar, and what is referred to as the permanent bar, which refers to several different situations, but we're going to be talking about one of the most common ones that I encounter here today. So if you are unlawfully present in the US for more than 6 months, but for less than 1 year, and then you step foot outside of the United States, you automatically trigger a 3-year bar. Here's an example. You enter as a tourist, they give you 6 months to legally stay here as a tourist, but you overstay, and you overstay by 7 months. So 6 months to be here legally, and then you overstay by 7 months. So 13 months after you enter the US, you depart the United States, thinking, hey, maybe I'll be able to come back as a tourist. You come back to the port of entry, whether it's the Canadian border or an airport, and then the immigration officer tells you, you are subject to a 3-year bar and there's no way you can come back into the United States without some sort of waiver. Now, let's take it one step further. Let's say you overstay by more than 365 days. So you have 365 days of unlawful presence in the United States. The moment you depart the United States, you trigger a 10-year bar from ever being able to return unless you are approved for an unlawful presence waiver while you are outside of the United States. By the way, there's also something called a provisional unlawful presence waiver. It's called a 601A waiver, which allows you to try to forgive that unlawful presence before you ever depart the United States to reduce the risk of being denied while you're outside of the United States. That's a complicated topic. I discussed it in other videos. We're not going to go through it here. So whether you trigger a 3-year bar or a 10-year bar, if you re-enter the US unlawfully during that 3 or 10-year period, you will trigger a permanent bar, which means no matter how much you otherwise qualify for permanent residence down the road, you will most likely need to depart the United States, wait outside of the United States for 10 years, and then jump through a bunch of hoops to try to re-enter the US legally. So back to the story. My client comes to me, he says, hey, look, I have a US citizen child who's over the age of 21, who's in the military. I know that I can use a military family member to fix my unlawful entry into the United States, and then I can apply for permanent residence. And he would be correct if he had not triggered the permanent bar. And now there's no way to really fix his status inside the United States through the standard family-based immigration process. There might be some other outlier options that are fairly risky. One of them might be cancellation of removal, but I would not apply for that for the vast majority of my clients. I cannot tell you how many times I've met with clients who would have been eligible for permanent residence if they just stayed in the United States and never departed. I hear lots of really sad stories like I had to leave the United States, my mother was dying, I had to go see her before she died, and then I came back to my family in the United States. I get it. I'm not sure what I would have done in that situation, but unfortunately, you trigger the permanent bar by doing that. And so before you consider departing the United States, I would advise you to speak with an immigration attorney because you might have immigration options available to you down the road, and you might be shooting yourself in the foot if you trigger the permanent bar, which might make those options impossible in the future. All right, that brings us to the end of today's video. I just hear a lot of people saying like, hey, I'll leave and then I'll come back in 4 years when Trump's gone, but it's not that simple. If you're going through the immigration process yourself, or you're marrying a US citizen, or want a family member to petition for you, that's something that I focus on. We would love to consult with you, and we would love to help you go through that immigration process. Feel free to schedule a consultation. Our information is in the video description below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time for another video.